You just pressed play on the Last Breath Huntcast, home of the HUNTROVERSY. We're here to entertain, educate, and engage. And in case you didn't know, you only live once. But if you do it right, once is enough. Don't waste it. Okay, we got another HUNTROVERSY coming down the pipe today. This is episode number 151. Our topic for today's episode is going to be...
Culling deer. Does it work? Does it not? Specifically bucks.
Yeah, well, this one was submitted again by Brandon Dibble. He is an Ohio resident, and he emailed and said, Ohio has done it 2 years in a row, and I absolutely hate it. So I've got a couple of articles that I have here. I just did a little bit of my own research to try to understand what Ohio is doing and why Brandon doesn't like it. But that's what we're talking about today is culling deer. Does it work? Does it not? This is another HUNTROVERSY because this is the home of the HUNTROVERSY, the Last Breath Huntcast, presented by Badlands Gear. You can check them out at badlandsgear.com. And using our code here, LastBreath22BL30, you can receive 30% off your order at badlandsgear.com. All of those characters are uppercase, no spaces in between them. Again, it's LastBreath22BL30. Another partner of our podcast is Outdoor Edge Gear. Using the code LBTV25, all uppercase, no spaces, you can get yourself 25% off site-wide at OutdoorEdgeGear.com. Anything from sharpeners. They even have grill sets now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I know Father's Day is in the
butchering
rear view, but I mean they make everything. If
Memorial
you are serious about
Yep.
butchering your game, go check them out. They have literally everything that it takes to take it off the animal to cut it up.
Their Real Flex fillet knives are also they're a pretty nice amenity if you're a big fisherman. They're pretty handy.
Oh yeah. Tompkins Taxidermy. Almost everybody has touched back with Wayne. All the 15 guests that we have that used our code that took it to Wayne that are going to be picking it up at the launch party on August 19th. So kudos to Wayne for doing that again. Best customer service of any taxidermist I've ever had.
Absolutely. Dude's just
so that's been great.
Salt of the earth, man. Awesome guy. Works with his customers, works with his clients. His Google
Wayne will
Google
be mounting
space is proof in itself. I think he has over 35-star reviews. Every review he has is 5-star. Seriously.
Yep.
I mean, the guy's gold. Him and Michael do a great job.
He'll be mounting deer for 20 more years at least, and then when he's done, Michael, is our age. He's in his, 20s, low 30s, so
super single, ladies. Super single.
He will be, carrying the flame on once Wayne hangs up the cape, I would expect, whenever that day is, which is a long time from now, but, I mean, that's probably who's going to mount my deer for, literally the rest of my life.
Yep.
So that's great to have that established already. So our final person here, the Exodus MMT. It is a new carbon arrow. It's kind of almost a hybridized arrow developed by the guys at Exodus. You can check them out at ExodusOutdoorGear.com. They are live on their shop, and you can watch a video that details in great length why this arrow is a tailor-made hunting arrow specifically developed for your archery setup and why it hits like a Mack truck, why momentum is the key to, pass-throughs, deadly blood trails,
holes,
everything like that, and why they believe that this new arrow that they've developed, which is essentially a full metal jacket arrow, it's a carbon micro diameter shaft wrapped in a carbon weave.
So
just stronger than shit, basically.
It's a similar design to the FMJs, and so what they've done is instead of it having like an aluminum body, like the FMJs, they've used a stouter carbon shaft, and then they've got their weave on the outside, so it allows it to stabilize better, holds up better to use and abuse, and just like you said, you're still going to be able to get those arrow weights to create momentum, your units of slugs, because 2 holes, man. I think it's a key to so many factors in game recovery.
Yeah, and they have also straightness and weight tolerance the crap out of their arrows to the highest, like most premium arrow standards there are. So you're getting a really good arrow if you end up using the Exodus MMT. I believe I'm going to set them up for my new V3X and start hawking arrows out of that sucker this fall. So I'll have my setup from last year on my V3, and then I'll have the setup from this year on the V3X with these Exodus MMTs. So I'm really excited to start shooting them. When I made that switch to gold tip about 3 years ago, after I lost that buck where I hit him in a spot that, was it the greatest shot? No, but had I gotten a pass through, I think I would have killed him. Or even just more penetration. I do believe that we would have recovered that deer
100%.
pretty quickly, actually. And ever since I made the change to like a micro shaft, I've pretty much
just
killed
a
every
heavier
deer.
Setup, higher, it's
killed
crazy.
every deer that I've shot at with them. So
fucking every lesson, hard knocks, right?
Yeah, exactly. So check those out, and I'll be interested to see your feedback. I'm going to start shooting them here probably within the next couple weeks. So excited to see what they do, especially at range. They've got a really good video that details the entire arrow, though, and why they believe it's just going to be awesome. So check that out at ExodusOutdoorGear.com. So our topic today, culling deer, submitted by Brandon Dibble again. Thank you for submitting this, Brandon. He said, Ohio has done it 2 years in a row, and I absolutely hate it. I looked into this, and I basically Googled, what is Ohio's deer culling program? And in metro parks, which I don't know if Brandon lives, I guess I should have emailed him back for a little bit more context, but apparently in metropolitan areas, in parks, recreational areas, deer are being culled from the state of Ohio. And the article that I just found said 6,340 pounds of venison donated, which that's a
lot.
That's a lot of venison, when you're taking 40 to 70 pounds of venison off. Here, let's do a little quick math here. Calculator time. Let's see. What do you think an average weight of getting meat off of a deer would be?
I think being generous, you can say 50 for simplicity of math.
Okay, that's not as many as I thought at all. 126.
Yeah.
6,340 divided by 50. Yeah, only 126 deer. I thought that was going to be more. So, Metro Parks has donated 6,340 pounds of ground venison from the 2020-2021 culling season to Cherry Street Ministries and other local organizations that feed the hungry. Since the culling program began in 2015, Metro Parks has donated 54,238 pounds of meat to charities. Culling is conducted under a permit used by the Ohio Division of Wildlife. The operation uses professional marksmen working at night when the parks are closed to safely, humanely, and effectively reduce the deer population. The meat is then donated to local food pantries and soup kitchens. So
tell me that isn't a dream job.
That would be fun.
Guess what? You get to go to this urban area that's highly populated in deer and hunt with the thermal scope at night.
Yeah.
What?
It'd be like playing a video game.
Jesus Christ.
Yep.
But anyway.
So getting into culling and it potentially being a myth, I did look up a really nice article that was published between Realtree and Unison in partnership with QDMA, which said, it has been proven many times that hunters and land managers can improve the average antler size substantially by allowing bucks to mature and improving the habitat. So, short answer to, does culling work? No, not really. Letting deer grow works. The next snippet out of this article that I picked up by the author, he said, the other person I reached out to was Matt Ross, a biologist with the QDMA. What did he have to say in the issue on when I asked him if culling works or not? No, not in free-range situations it doesn't, Ross said. My opinion that culling is too often used by deer hunters as a means to an end. The term cull is thrown out there frequently to justify why they choose to kill a certain animal. There's no need to do that. Be proud of your harvest. Every legal kill on a deer is a good one, and it should be celebrated.
I think that's...
So do you feel like culling, like the word is just used as a facade or a mask to
I think
shoot?
I think it's a good way that you can use to label deer of lesser caliber.
Okay.
Like, a cull buck. If somebody says that's a cull buck, you don't think it's going to be anything spectacular. A cull deer to me is a quote-unquote management animal, right? You've all seen outfitters have management hunts or other things, and The context in which cull is being used in Ohio is a lot different than I think what the context of cull is normally used in. Culling in Ohio's situation, I don't think they're being subjective to deer with lesser antlers or desirable traits. Their objective is to reduce population.
Mm-hmm.
So that's population density control. That's what Ohio's doing, and I can understand why Brandon doesn't like that, especially if he hunts in these areas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, dude, you're killing the deer that I'm trying to hunt.
Yeah.
Like, you kill 126 deers on these limited areas. That's a lot of deer,
Mm-hmm.
But so I read an article from Auburn University, and they've got a really good wildlife program. Dr. Steve Kitchoff is kind of like the head of that program. He's a PhD. He's a full professor there. And this was one of the quotes that he said. It's easy to believe that we are influencing genetics through selective harvest, but there are many factors that wildlife managers fail to consider. You cannot affect the genetics as a hunter, and you cannot influence genetics through selective culling in a wild deer population. I think what is important to note about these is both, the biologist you reference in this one is it's a wild deer population. I also thought it was interesting when I read this article that similar to humans and any species, like the female has a large influence on the genetic capabilities and characteristics of the offspring. And so we don't ever hear of people or hunters or land managers culling does, because you really, without watching and seeing what they produce, in like a controlled environment, you don't know, this doe is known for producing bigger fawns or healthier
it's
fawns.
Completely the opposite of the standard scientific method and like research practices based for the last like 20 to 60 years of American research. It's like there's no control. There is the variable is in question. I mean, it needs to be truly under a microscope to pull it off and to determine.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're talking about genealogy at that point, and it needs to be restricted to the nth degree.
For the same reason that you don't take a thoroughbred horse and breed them with, a skinny short mare.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you take a super stud, stallion and you breed them with a subpar mare, you're not going to get a winner. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at bloodlines and dogs, if you look at these, high fence operations and deer farms, I mean, it is very meticulous on both the male and the female side on what they use to create that perfect quote unquote combination to create what they want. So it is unfortunate, but it's a huge farcity. And I do think that there are things such as management deer and cull deer. Like, there are deer that just don't have it in them. Every 5.5-year-old, 6.5-year-old buck's not going to be a booner. Period. The end. Not even close.
Not in the wild.
I mean, TJ was 5.5, and he's maybe 150.
I feel like another thing to keep in mind is like the bucks that are around, like in the genetic pool. Like, if you... We have conversations about it all the time. Like, we'll say the thing out here is bleh. The thing out here is bleh. Like Matt has killed and seen and had on camera, I think 5, 6, 7 drop tine deer at this point in his hunting career.
Mm-hmm.
He's killed several. We have not. I don't believe, unless I'm speaking out of turn and I'm forgetting, I don't think we've ever had a drop tine deer one time.
Nope, never.
But we'll have conversations like split brow. That's a thing that's happening out here.
Kickers.
Or like kickers. That's a thing that's happening out here. Or inline tines occasionally. That's a thing that's happening here. Or these deer just get really massive. That's a thing that's happening out here. And I don't know if that's deer.
That's genetic. 100%.
That's genetic or what it is. But
I mean,
my thing is like, I feel like the underrated like ghost variable in this situation is, all right, so let's say these big megalodon deer that we've killed. Let's take Geronimo. Well, Geronimo was humping and dumping for 7 ruts worth of reproduction.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
they're not monogamous.
And so how are you actually controlling it? So by that logic, every big superstar stud deer that's in your neck of the woods is, there's generations of that deer. For the same reason, there's generations of deer that are just going to be a Basque-Rack 8 their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
So I do believe that, like you said, some deer just don't have it in them. But I also believe, like, what's really dumb is saying, I'm going to kill this 3 or 4 year old buck. He's just not adding up to much, whatever. Well, he's already done the deed.
Yeah.
2, 3, 4 times. A year.
More, yeah. I mean, a day sometimes. Shit.
So my thing is, how are you going to control that? And I feel like it would be. I feel like it's impossible.
And that's why I think you have most biologists add that wild population in a controlled setting.
Yeah.
Right. Just like you were talking about the scientific method, you can keep carving and trimming and making this work.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have, again, an unknown variable being wildlife, it's just super hard to control. I think where the culling aspect to me comes into play is kind of along the lines of the dominant buck theory. I think that you can have mature deer that aren't trophies in some people's eyes, like they just don't have the tops. But that mature deer is going to keep other deer out of the area, even younger deer that would score better than him.
Yep.
So I think that's where an essence of culling can come into play. You have this 5.5, 6.5-year-old 8-point bully buck that calls your farm home. He's running off all the other deer, including other mature deer or younger deer that might inhabit it that have potential to be larger. And that's where you have guys, I think, like Don Higgins that believes in this principle of like, we've talked about it before, your property is a hotel. Maybe you have a 2-bedroom hotel. Maybe you have a 50-bedroom hotel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Regardless, you've got limited
occupancy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so you want to try to fill that hotel up with superstars. And so if you have these rooms that are being occupied by not superstars, if you remove him, you're not guaranteed to get a superstar there, but you don't have that dud, right?
Yep.
It's kind of like tree management. It's the same concept there. So that's where I think culling, in quotations, the selective harvesting of management animals can benefit you.
Yep.
But you're not genetically modifying it. You're just allowing for an opportunity for a deer with better genetics or a bigger deer just in general to come and take over that deer's resources that it was consuming, or that bedding area, quote unquote, that slot.
Yep. I'll bring up one of the good ones that we've had over the course of our time that we've seen and actually tried to do this too. It's a deer that we call McDagger. So in season 3, we have a bunch of video of him. He's on the Geronimo episode. He's on the Junkyard episode. We saw that deer, I don't know, probably 10, 15 times on the hoof. 3 to 7 of those times probably being killable as a 3-year-old. We saw him as a 4-year-old.
Killable.
We saw him as a 5-year-old. And at that point, we're like, okay, we've let this deer get to maturity, and this is the bread and butter farm. This isn't the heartbeat farm. So we're trying to hold out for 5-year-olds or better on the bread and butter farm, which is something that we've managed, and it's like it's our best farm. It's where most of our best deer have come from. But this deer literally didn't get any bigger from 3 till 7 when we lost track of him. And I just don't know where he went. He may have
the EHD year,
he may have died.
Yeah.
But I found his antler, and I have it downstairs on top of one of my kitchen cabinets. And I'm guessing that if you doubled and gave him a 16-inch spread, which is probably what he had, we're saying probably a 115-inch whitetail, maybe 120. And so this deer just never got any bigger. So it got to the point where when he was 6, we're like, oh my God, that's him again. Because he had very characteristic brow tines. We're going to kill him. And there was one particular morning during gun season where we didn't have our tree arm with me, and I had the gun in my hand. And he was about, 40, 50 yards from us. Could have killed him. Camera saved his life truly that day, or the lack thereof of us getting really good footage. So he walks, he lives. We get zapped with EHD. I'm assuming he got killed in that. But that deer did not grow, if we're talking inches of antler, which, if you've listened to our Huntroversy on scoring and things of that nature, you know that I'm not a big fan because, a 5-year-old 8-pointer is going to make 140 is not going to be as big as a 5-year-old 160 as a 10. And that's just the difference in genetics. So, getting back to, what Don Higgins' thing is, in unison with what you just said, is that we're going to take these 5-year-olds and he's going to have guests and people like that, because he's ultra mega super concerned with score. That's his big thing. Wants to shoot big scoring deer. It's all he really cares about. If you listen to his podcast, it's what they talk about all the time. And the problem with that, I feel like, is that it's just as difficult to kill a 5-year-old regardless of the rack on their head, which I've said and brought up in podcasts before is one of my major balks with scoring. Like if you take Geronimo and you add G4s onto him, he's all of a sudden 190, maybe 200. Who knows? But just because he's an 8-point mainframe
doesn't mean he was
any lesser.
Or
Which
hard
is
to kill.
Which pisses me off about scoring. But that's
same thing with McDagger.
That's another thing.
I think what you're getting into is that deer was a resident deer,
and we gave him a chance to grow, and he did. He got to be fully mature. 5 years old.
But he took up one of those slots.
But he took up a slot, and so we're like, all right, we need to kill him so that another deer can take up a slot, because this deer has taken up a slot for too long.
And we have found this. I mean, we have seen it happen. We're very fortunate that typically we on the bread and butter farm, we've been able to make it attractive enough to hold one deer, and the mature deer that we hold and we harvest, we find that vacancy is almost immediately filled. And I'm not talking the next day. I'm talking by late season. We've got a new deer that's moved in that now says, wow, this is nice. I don't have an objector. I'm going to take this slot, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying they literally lay in the same exact bed. It's just we've noticed this, and that you have the ability to, when you remove that mature deer from that area, it quite literally opens the door. Whether it's a younger deer on your farm that kind of fills in, or if it's a deer that moves in from elsewhere. Megatron is a great example of that.
Yep.
That we had no idea he existed. He came on to us, we believe, as 4. Mm-hmm. And now we've begun to see that habitual process of now where he's coming in. TJ's gone, right? He doesn't have that objector. We never once saw TJ and Megatron together all year. We knew that TJ was running them off, and that's just how deer work. Yeah. So I do think getting full circle that, like you were talking about with McDagger, if only hindsight, if we would have removed him when he was 5 instead of saying, oh, he could put on a lot of mass or something, we would have had an opportunity to get a different deer in there. And we had that really valuable real estate, that really valuable room, if you will, taken up by a turd. Yeah. But nonetheless, hard to kill. But through the opportunities and sightings that we saw of him, I would have much rather had a different deer in there, with that frequency, right? And that repetitiveness.
And I feel like going back to the question of does culling work, I feel like culling does work. I feel like it's impossible for you to control. I feel like it's virtually impossible for you to control. Like if you're in a research setting, does culling work? Probably.
Yeah, absolutely. In a controlled setting.
Yep. It stands to reason that if you get a room full of tall people, like a room full of 100 tall people, 50 women that are above 5'9", and 50 men that are above 6'4", it stands to reason that reproductively, you're going to have some tall offspring when they produce in any combination. But in the wild, it's impossible to regulate that. Therefore, culling deer in the wild doesn't work. Getting back to what the guy in the QDMA article said, what I don't like and what breaks my heart about culling is when it's used as a vice to justify a kill. And if there's one thing it's one of my big pet peeves, and I've been saying it for years. If you're not excited about a deer, or you're just laying a deer in a truck or whatever, and you're not excited about that, then why did you kill it? Why did you take its life? If you're just going to cut hunting means different stuff to everything, and I'm not trying to push my belief on anyone, but the way I feel is if you're going to kill a deer and he was good enough for you to kill and take out of the field, then I feel like you should at least honor him by putting his skull somewhere in your house. Maybe shoulder mount somewhere in your house. Mm-hmm. I don't know. You don't have to mount every deer. That's not what I'm saying. But don't be the guy that's going to go out there, shoot a buck, kill it. That could have been really awesome for a young kid to be their first deer, or really exciting for the old person that's just getting out of hunting, or somebody that's getting in new to hunting to be their first deer and really burn that experience for them with hiding behind the fact that it's a cold deer. Like, don't shoot a spike that's basically like a dog with antlers, and it's cull buck. Well, you didn't give it a chance. We don't know what this deer is going to be. This deer could have been, a booner in 4 years or 5 years? We
just
don't know.
I feel like Cole is really throwing around like those 2 and
I hate
3
the
year old
word.
eight pointers, that are like, that's just it. And so I eventually see that it'll go to the wayside as research continues to produce, and these wildlife managers, wildlife biologists continue to produce studies like out at Auburn or Mississippi State where they do these things.
Mm-hmm.
It just, you won't be able to say that anymore. That I took him because he was a Cole buck. I don't know. I guess I do have one other thing to bring up that I do think could waver to be what would be a God's honest Cole buck, but I think again that this needs to be noted that it's not necessarily affecting the genetics in the herd, but it's going to be affecting the resources available on your properties or the rooms. Is like those anomaly deer that really just, maybe they broke their skull plate, or they they had a birth defect where they're just, that one side's wonky, or they're growing like clubs, not a basket rack deer, but you know what I'm saying? Like literally the deer that like looks like their antlers are melting, or they're rotten and soft, kind of like that deer that was a couple years ago that was shot, that Jeff shot. You know what I'm talking about? Where it's like spongy antlered, and that to me is truly a Cole deer. Like I killed him because for last year and this year he's had that really weird growth abscess on his antler on his left side, and he hasn't done anything. Is a Cole deer, but you're not removing that genetic strain like we talked about from the thing. You're just removing that deer because you've seen him, like a McDagger.
Yep.
But you can do that, I think, earlier, like to a younger deer because of that. Like maybe he's got a bummed foot, and so his right foot's messed up, so his left rack is just nothing. And the second year he comes and he does it again, and the deer's young, but you're like, he's taking up real estate. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I feel like that's where you have an exception to honestly use Cole correctly, where you're like, this deer has a defect that's, noticeable, very young.
Yeah, not a funky rack.
Yeah.
Something wrong with it.
Yes. Yeah. Like those cactus head bucks, you've seen them where it's like literally looks just like a mass of velvet growing.
I think that's when a deer gets castrated, right? When they are castrated at a young age.
I don't know. Never.
I think lots of times when people find they shoot a velvet buck in a state like ours with a late opener, it's because the buck's been like castrated and the testosterone levels were never at a deficit or a peak enough
to
be
trigger
like,
that.
Shed your antler, or hardhorn, it's time to go now. You know what I mean? Culling, I feel like in that respect, that's probably fair to say.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're taking this deer out.
We haven't had any of them, but like I know of people that have had those deer, like our relatives, the Olsons. They have a deer that literally grows 2 spikes, and it grows like down the side of its head, like comes out and like 2 bananas that wrap around its head.
Yep.
And it's done it 2 years in a row. Regardless of the deer's age, I get it. If you shoot that deer and say I took him out because he was a Cole deer, I'm gonna agree with you. Because, like, okay, year after year, it wasn't just that dumbass ran into a freaking oak tree when he was a fawn, and his first year of antler growth was messed up. Nope, he's going to do that every year. I could see that. But
The noun, a selective slaughter of wild animals. That's Cole. The verb, select from a large quantity, obtain from a variety of sources. So what do you feel about culling?
Interesting that it said wild animals, because I feel like culling is used with way more effectiveness in captive herds.
Yes. Well, this definition of cull says to reduce or control the size of something, such as a herd, by removal of especially weak or sick individuals. So I was hoping that the definition would say something about that. What about culling based upon injury? Do you feel like that's... All right, so you've got, your typical 3 or 4 year old 8.
We had this experience literally this year.
Got a Oh, that sucked. Should have shot that deer the night that
How do you know?
Sucked bad. I would say I don't know, an upper 130s. It'd be tough to sniff 140 9-pointer. Really tall tines, like he's a nice deer. Comes limping in, very hard limp, like not putting any weight on his front shoulder. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know. I want to wait for Megatron because that's the purpose of why I was out there. Didn't shoot him, and well, our neighbor found him dead, so he did die over the winter, which that stinks that he did die. But do you feel like hunters should do a better job of culling like three-legged bucks with injured front shoulders, does with injured front and rear shoulders, like a deer that's been into a snafu with a car where they're probably on their way to losing the leg completely, or meeting their maker when it comes to having to put themselves in a fight or flight scenario where, if you got a coyote that's nipping on your heels, I mean, a little easier to catch a three-legged deer for a coyote.
I think the question doesn't lie in culling then. It lies in like morality. If you've all seen an animal. You've all seen animals where you're like, man, they're just suffering versus like, it's got a little bit of a limp. Like there's a difference. We all know the difference. Just like you said, that deer that you saw in late season, he was lean, which most deer are lean in late season, but he looked even leaner, and he was moving extremely slow, no weight on his shoulder. I mean, the deer, when the video you got of him, his head was down most of the time. Like, he just didn't look right, versus a deer that's got a little hitch in their get-up. You're like, you just got in a little scuffle. I feel like it's not necessarily culling as it is like this deer is obviously in pain. The chance of recovery is slim. I'm going to not be a bigger man necessarily, but I'm going to do what I think is right. Yeah. I'm going to end your life ethically rather than let it be long and drawn out or get eaten alive, like you said, by coyotes, That's where it is. I don't know if cull's the right term. It's definitely a version of cull, but again, in my mind, cull has just been painted as a word that's used to say, I am taking this deer's life because it's not going to amount to anything. That's why I took him. Not because he snuck up on me and I got excited. Not because I didn't look at him really good before I shot. Not because all I could see was his G2 and I thought he was another deer. It's like, now it's like, yep, I culled this buck because he was never going to be anything.
Yeah, and oftentimes when I find that that's the case, it's not like culling in the sense like what we were talking about, like removing or creating the extra hotel room in the hotel. It's more so. I think a lot of, like, Heartland Bowhunter does a lot of that. They shoot a lot of mature deer that are that mid 130 range. Yeah. And they do a fantastic job being like, boom, here he was at 2, boom, here he was at 3, boom, here he was at 4. Yeah. And this is just 5. Like, and they don't ever say that they're removing him for the time slot or the slot or anything, or at least the videos that I have watched, but they just say, yeah, he's mature. I'm going to shoot him. He's on the hit list because he's this old. Yep. And like, then they'll have another opportunity at a very big deer on that same farm. And I think it has reason to believe because of that. Like I said, you have limited amount of resources. Deer, especially bucks, especially mature bucks, are territorial with those resources. Like, it just makes sense. You pluck one out, you have an opportunity, not guarantee, an opportunity for something better to be in there. Yeah, I feel like that's a good stance to take on culling, because I think it works in a research setting. I don't think an outdoorsman, no matter how many tags they have, I mean, if you had an unlimited amount of buck tags, I still don't know, like the age-old question, and maybe we should get a deer biologist on here to talk about the question that I've wondered about for years and years and years. Like, is that spike that we see, is that spike going to be a fork next year? Or are those... And I have a shed. It's one of my favorite sheds that I have. It fits in the palm of my hand, but it's a 5-point side. Yeah, it's literally a 5-point side, 10-point antler.
Looks like a miniature shed.
Yeah, it looks like a miniature 10-point side. It's literally fits in my hand. And I wonder if that deer, like if you see deer like that, like remember Stallion, like maybe a year and a half old deer, mainframe 10-pointer, but with splits and kickers, like. You're thinking, oh my gosh, he got zapped with EHD, unfortunately. But
like that deer had it.
That deer you would expect that deer was going to be really exceptional in the antler department, or pretty boy.
Another great example. I just I feel like
to know which deer to cull at the beginning of their life, you would have to be. You'd have to have so many freaking tags, so many people hunting.
I think we can talk a little bit quickly about like the inverse of culling. You know, there are some areas where you have restrictions, like management restrictions, like legal bucks, legal bulls, 4.1 side or something.
Yep.
That to me is where I think there's also a very gray area there where I understand they're trying to do that to reduce the amount of culling. Like, right, you have to have 4 points on one side, like,
and increase the age too.
That's what I'm saying. But with that being said, gosh, there are slammer ass mature animals that don't meet those legal expectations. You know, you have to have like a bull has to have 4 points on one side, or like a buck has to have 4 points on one side. I mean, there are some giant gnarly 6-pointers who get killed all the time, and it's like I guess I would wonder.
Do you think a 6-point, a big mature 6, like a 4+ year old 6, gets killed all the time though? Like I don't.
I'm not saying it does. I'm saying like in these areas where there are point restrictions, legally you can't shoot that buck.
Yeah, I know that.
I wonder what I would love, man, if any of you guys have testimonies on this, like there has to be some subjectiveness from your local division of natural resources or wildlife, game and fish, you know, like
how does a broke buck count in that case? You know, I've never hunted in a
that's what I'm saying
restriction
too.
point state
I don't know.
like that.
I don't know. You know what I mean? Like
clearly
this
what happens to a 10-pointer that's got one side sweeped off?
Well, the other side would have it. You know, one side.
What happens to an 8-pointer if you got like a 4-point antler restriction?
Both as G2s or G3s, you know, little things like that.
Yep.
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I would love to know, because that's kind of like the inverse of culling, right? Now we have an management placement in place, a management restriction in place to try to cultivate larger deer. I wonder what that would. I don't know. We've never hunted. Or I don't know if we have anybody that has hunted in a place that has like legal restrictions, right?
I know Michigan, like northern Michigan, when Bob was hunting up there, like he was talking about the antler point restrictions, like around the same time that they lifted some kind of like baiting law up there. He was telling me about it. Can't remember the exact definition and word of the law, but I believe that Michigan has an antler point restriction in place. I don't know about any other states, but I know that one, at least in certain like areas, counties, townships, whatever. But I feel like that's one of those states that's one of those harder ones to hunt where the hunter density is so high.
What I would like to see, we'll get off on my tangents, but you know, everybody talks about the good old days of deer check-in points. You know, deerage.com, and there's other universities and stuff that can do this now, that do the centennium aging, where they just take a cross section of your tooth, they look at the calcium buildup, and they can age it pretty quickly. Just have to look under a microscope. Man, wouldn't it be pretty neat if, like, let's say the state of Iowa or Illinois decided that they were going to do that just for a year, just to get a pulse on it, like every buck or even every deer that you checked in, like they just had the biologist there, you pop the tooth out, they cut it, like a little
I think they try
line.
to do that with the antler, like check-in. Like for us, like when you go like millimeters around the antler base, like it stands to reason.
I know.
Like most of the deer that I've shot
like the measurement
personally
from the
are
eye
between
to the nose.
Are like 3 and 4 year old deer. Like the majority of the deer. Shot a couple at 5. The majority are 3 and 4 though. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so,
I just
like
think
those
it
deer
would
with
be,
like 7-inch mass measurements, like a scary mass measurement, like Geronimo caliber, like the most massive deer we've ever killed is Geronimo. He's the oldest.
Right.
If you backtrack it to the second oldest deer that we've ever killed, that'd be like
the grade 8.
The grade 8. That's the second most massive deer. We believe he was 6.
Right.
You know, like I think Illinois and Iowa are already trying to get a pulse on that. It's a stretch. There are those massive 4-year-olds or those spindly older deer.
And discrepancies, right? Like,
but I think for the most part that's hitting the checkbox of that.
I know. I would love to see the data, like of percentage of bucks killed that were 2, 3, 4. You know what I mean? Just it'd be interesting. It'd be really cool.
I think those sites are pretty cool just because it's given people like us who have talked about it for years and years and years, and we're like, oh, what's this deer's age? Are we good at doing this? And it felt good to see, like, the first deer that we did it to last year, we were right.
Yeah, you were right.
So, yeah. I knew that some bitch was 3. I was like, man, he's way too wide to be a 2-year-old when we saw him.
He just was tiny. Wayne even said that. He's like, dude, everything about
His
this
body.
buck is miniaturized.
Yeah. Maybe that EHD theory that he had.
That's what he said. Yeah. So Wayne has this theory that if a deer survives EHD, it kind of like stunts their growth. And he's a beautiful deer. Proud as hell to kill him. But like his hooves were tiny. His body was tiny. Like he was short. And like Wayne said that it was interesting. Not his neck circumference wasn't necessarily petite. It was his neck length.
Yeah.
And he said also his like facial features were shorter. So
there's a cool story about that down the street. One of my neighbors, one of my buddies, Jacob Doak, his father has killed some absolute slamming whitetails. A couple of them that are hanging up in the house there. But in their garage, he's got a huge deer. Like, I think he's like mid 180s. And I'm like, holy shit, why don't you have this deer mounted? And he was like, it was the tiniest buck you ever saw. I made Jacob go pull him out when he was 11. Like, you think of an 11-year-old dragging a buck. He's like, yeah, he's pulling him over logs. He threw him over his shoulders, and I was like, huh? Because Doak's not a small guy, but he's not huge.
Right.
And I'm like, all right, let's think what Doak looked like at 11. Probably about
string bean, little
5'2", 120.
Maybe. Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, not a lot of people can throw I was like, what do you think it weighed? And he's like, oh, he probably weighed 140 pounds. And I was like, what? 140 pounds.
Well, Wayne kept telling me this, and I was like, I'm scrubbing through the footage,
crazy.
and like we drug him up out of that creek.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. Like we're both pretty big dudes, and I think we could have done it regardless. But I'm like, it wasn't like we killed ourselves dragging that deer out either.
No.
But anyway, that's it.
Okay.
Sorry for the long-winded tangent there. Boy, we took a side road.
Yeah, but it's all related though when it comes back to it. So here we go. Ready?
Yes, sir.
Shoot or pass. Again, this is a segment we do when we're doing controversial episodes. Our first question, Garrett's just going to say shoot or pass. A half-rack elk on the first day of your self-guided trip, 15 yards, broadside, with your bow.
Pass.
Oh, really? Okay, fine.
Half rack?
I don't know. For 15 yards broadside, I feel like that's a golden-ass goose opportunity.
Oh, it's a golden-ass goose.
I would punch
How long are we hunting? A week?
A week.
I mean, shit.
First
day?
I'm punching that motherfucker. Oh, yeah, big time. A random buck, last day of season.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I mean, a random buck that falls within, like, our...
You want to shoot?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that to me is a bonus deer. Would he stay there next year? Maybe.
Yeah.
Never seen him before, ever. No trail camera footage. Last day of season, I still got a tag or haven't killed a buck. Like,
yeah.
That's a good opportunity.
Okay. An antelope with a broken horn. Not gone, just broken. Let's say it's in half. So one of his pipes and shovels in half.
Am I bow hunting or rifle hunting?
You can field both questions.
Rifle I'd pass, bow I'd shoot.
Okay. An apparently injured yearling doe with a gun tag second to last day of whatever gun season you're hunting in. But it's injured. It's apparent. No weight on a certain limb or
probably gonna shoot it.
Something. Okay.
I mean,
even on the second to last day.
Well, I mean, is that my tag then?
That's your tag.
God, that's a tough one.
The easy thing about you and me though is we always have backup tags. Like we never don't have like additional. We always have a muzzleloader and a shotgun tag. This is reference to season.
Like it is your tag.
It is your tag. Yeah.
That's conflicting. Gosh, you want to say that you're going to, put it out of its misery, quote unquote. But then again, you have a whole nother day and shit can change in 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
If it was my only tag, I'm not going to shoot it.
Okay. This one's really short. A bison.
Yeah.
Really?
Fuck yes. Dude, okay. I mean, like, from a meatitarian standpoint, it's like a cow plus 200 pounds. Like, you only hear people rave about bison.
You would assume that it's pretty good.
Yeah. I'd shoot that thing with anything. Flintlock, handgun. If I got a tag for a bison, let's go.
Okay. Whenever I feel like Africa comes up, I feel like Lion King is the greatest PR move in the history of time for conditioning people to like, no, let's not shoot that.
Yeah.
So let's go to Africa. We're on a free trip. Shoot or pass a giraffe.
Free?
Free.
Like that's the only thing I get to shoot?
A giraffe.
Like you got a free trip to giraffe hunt in Africa. That's it. Not any like warthogs or nothing, just a giraffe. I'd be stupid if I didn't.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you go onto an African website and you go and
they're
like, view their safaris,
20 grand? I don't even know.
a
how
giraffe's
much.
insane. Yep, it's insane. How about a zebra?
Oh yeah, I'd shoot one of those. Yeah.
Like a striped horse?
Yeah.
Man, I don't know.
It's not anywhere on my spectrum, but if you told me this is free, like you know,
Okay, what if I back up the tightness of the finances? What if I said 50% off? Hey,
oh no. Yeah, no.
if you're paying any money, you wouldn't pay any money to shoot either of those animals.
No, but if it's free, I mean, you'd be stupid to pass up that experience. Don't get me wrong. The fucking hate mail would just pile up.
Yeah,
but,
right.
Like, you know, I don't know how else to put that in context. It's just, you know, you'd be giving up a free experience.
I feel like there's certain things that I'm just like, that's weird that they want to kill that. Like whenever I see, and it's only occasionally, whenever I see somebody posed with a giraffe or with a zebra, I'm just like,
Zebra's not near as off the wall. Like there are herds and herds and herds and herds of those, you know, like.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, a zebra skin rug like on your floor or something, it'd look really nice.
I have a tough time with this debate in my own head. And the debate is pretty simple. It is, what's the difference between hunting and target practice on a living thing? What's the difference between those two? Because like I feel like, all right, you go to Africa, you get into a caged Jeep in the back where there's a couple benches for your gear and stuff. You go on a safari tour and around, and these people, they, even though they've got their high-powered rifles and stuff, they go prone, whatever they need to do, a couple 100 yards away from this giraffe, who has really no reason to be scared of this vehicle other than the fact that he's seen a couple of his buddies die every once in a while when they come around, and then you shoot it. I'm like,
I don't know. I guess
I have a tough time with that, and that's what kind of I associate Africa with. I associate it with bow hunting over water holes and stuff like that, but then for the really high-priced stuff that you can kill, like your iconic African game, we're talking like lions, giraffes, zebras, like the cheetahs, cats, right? I feel like it's, you know, they've got to protect the hunter because those are all dangerous things to kill. Like if you go kill an animal, it's not just killing a whitetail when you're plinking a bullet in an elephant. You know, they could kill you. Could roll a truck.
Well, so I just think we're speaking on
know.
behalf of like everything we've seen. I know three guys now that have gone to Africa, and it's been pretty unanimous. They say it's
bow hunting over water
a ton
hole,
of
right?
fun.
Or bait.
One guy bow hunted, the other two guys rifle hunted, and it's like I guess it's one.
I'm
of
not
those,
saying it's not fun. I'm just saying like
I'm not saying that they didn't have fun. I'm saying they had a really good experience. I don't know. I feel like you always get that depiction of them like driving around, but I think it's a style of hunting. Like they drive into position and then they put a stalk on, whether the stalk takes them 100 yards or the stalk takes them 1,000 yards. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say that I'll never go.
Yeah.
There's so many other things that I would do, and that like the animals that you listed just aren't even on the realm.
Mm-hmm.
My number one thing if I ever went to Africa would be to kill a kudu. I just think those things, the great
the
ghost, those
the
big
horned
black curl horns. Yeah.
goats family and ungulate family.
Yeah. I mean, it would just be cool to see that entire new continent, like have that and be like, say that I went there and did it. But
no, that's fair.
you know, like Clark, Robert, and then a guy in the wood industry that I know, like they've all had, they said it was, would they do it again? Maybe not.
But they are glad that they went.
They're glad that they went.
That's
yeah.
fair.
Wow.
Okay, fair enough. That rounds us out of Shooter Pass. A couple notes before we get to the end here. The launch party, August 19th, the Adler Theater in Davenport, Iowa. Free beer, free gear, free films. All you have to do is show up. Doors open at 6:30. Films roll at 7:30. So we're giving you guys time to get off of your work day. We've had the launch party. This will be our 7th year doing it. We've had it on Saturday one time. Friday is definitely the better of the turnouts. That's why 6 out of 7 of them that we've had have been on a Friday. So come after work, go grab a beer or some dinner with your buddies, and then we'll have some more beer there chilled and ready for you when you get there. Again, films roll at 6:30, or excuse me, doors open at 6:30 for free beer and about a 1 hour long, let's see how much beer we can drink-a-thon. And again, that's on August 19th. In Davenport, Iowa, at the Adler Theater. If you have not yet, check out our Facebook group, The Last Breath Inner Circle, where we share all of our kills as they happen live in the field. This year, for you and me, we're going to be going live on your phone because I dumped Facebook the other day. So those people are the first ones to know about anything. So again, that's called The Last Breath Inner Circle. Thank you for listening to The Last Breath Huntcast. We'll see you next Monday morning. Until then, do you have anything to add?
No, sir. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully we see you. Let's pack the Adler.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Don't waste it.